Hello and welcome again to another episode of One Starfish, where our mission is to help change the world one starfish or one person at a time. As always, make sure to rate, review, subscribe, share. That's how we get the word out, all that kind of good stuff. I'm really excited for our guest today. Anthony and I just met, just had a chat. He runs two businesses, general contracting, also business coaching. He's also a minister, which is really an interesting combination there. Has a family, been married 12 years, has a 9-year-old, a 3-year-old, doing all the things. And I'm excited to get into his story. So yeah, thanks for being on the show, Anthony.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure. It's always wonderful to be able to hear other people's stories, but I think I have one too that might just touch somebody.
That's awesome. Well, let's get into it. So let's back up. We talked a little bit about life in general. Let's back up to like childhood and, what got you into tell us kind of how you started and where you're at and kind of why you got where you're at.
So just like everybody else, I didn't have a perfect childhood. My parents divorced when I was a year old. I lived with my mother and an abusive stepfather for 11, 12 years after that. Originally, I'm from Buffalo, New York. I moved to North Carolina with my mother and stepfather, and my father shortly followed after. And there was a traumatic event there when I was about 12 years old between my stepfather and my mother. He had tried to kill my mother. And at that point, I had went to go live with my father. And that was kind of a transformative thing for me. I had really had to learn how to, I guess, handle myself and take care of myself. And so I grew up really fast. But my father was in the military, and that's actually how he met my mother. And so growing up, I had always wanted to serve. And I enlisted while I was still in high school. Both my parents signed off on it. And I left for Army basic training in infantry school shortly after graduation. And it was there that I really learned what life is about. And I really learned to be thankful for what I have. I got to had the opportunity to deploy to Iraq and serve as an infantryman there. And you do a lot with a little. And so coming back, I look at the world through this new lens of gratitude. So that was really important for me, a giant step into my life. And that's really where adulthood started for me. So from kind of traumatic, crappy childhood to that, I'm really kind of starting from a pretty cool point in young adulthood. And then the rest is just, it was struggle after struggle for a long time until finally the past few years, I'm not struggling as much, but it's still tough.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about, where the transition came from, drinking, and then you decided to become sober and then get into ministry. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So one of the things that most people don't know about the military, or at least the infantry, is that you almost have to become a professional alcoholic to fit in. And so I had started drinking when I was a kid. I'd started drinking when I was 14, partying throughout high school. I joined the Army, and then everybody drinks. It's a social thing. If you're not in training, we're usually drinking something. And so it just kind of came a way of life. And then going through combat and then coming back with what I now know is PTSD, in dealing with all of that, my brother, I had a half brother. He passed away in 2013, a year after I got out of the Army. He decided to end his own life. And so between that and then other friends that did the same thing that I had served with, I was using alcohol as a coping mechanism, heavily dependent on alcohol. I'm so fortunate that I never got a DUI, although I'd been pulled over twice. Never got out of it each time, but I never killed anybody or myself. I'm still married. My wife didn't leave me. She stuck with me through everything. But I drank all the time. It was every day. Now I'd still get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and I would go to work, but on my way home from work, I'd stop and get a drink on the way home, and that was it. But I woke up on a Sunday morning before church. I was still drunk. I woke up on the couch because I was arguing with my wife the night before. I don't even remember what was said. But I remember going to church and just praying. I said, God, this isn't what you want for me. And just take this from me. And I came home from church, and my wife didn't go that day. And I went into the bedroom where she was, and I said, I'm done. She said, what do you mean? I said, I'm done drinking. And she said, well, you don't have to quit. I mean, you just have to like be able to manage it, just like one or two. I said, no, you don't get it. I can't do that. That's not me. I have a highly addictive personality. I'm an all in type of person. If I do something, I commit to do something, I'm going all in. And that's even the things that aren't good for me. Right. Like tobacco use. I quit tobacco as well at the same time. And so that was just kind of a cold turkey stop. I never went to AA. I never went to anything like that. I changed my environment. I changed the people I was around, and I prayed a lot, and I haven't had a drop in, it'll be 6 years on July 22nd.
Oh, cool. Congratulations. If someone's listening to this and they're maybe dealing with something similar, some kind of addiction, whatever it is, there's lots out there. Even work can be an addiction. I've struggled with that one. So,
me too.
It's quote a healthy addiction, but it's still an addiction. So
That's
what are
right.
some things that were there days, I mean, you prayed but were there days that you're like wanted to do it, or was it like literally gone? And
So
if there was days you wanted to, how did you work through those?
There was definitely temptation. And it wasn't from what you would think would be the obvious, like being around somebody that's drinking or being around people that are drinking. That never really bothered me. In fact, it was kind of a turnoff because I never liked being the sober person around a bunch of drunk people. I don't like the smell of alcohol anymore. It turns my stomach. Same thing with like cigarettes. I can't stand the smell anymore. But it was when I was alone and no one was around. I remember the first time it was hard. I was in Denver, Colorado for a conference, and there was a little coffee shop in the lobby of the hotel, and they had a cooler with drinks and stuff like that. And I'm in there by myself, and I look around, and they have ice cold beer right there, and there's no one around me. And the small voice in my head says, "No one will know." And it was like, this is actually tough. So I just left. I have dreams, believe it or not, of me drinking. Mm-hmm. And I wake up in a panic with so much guilt. It's crazy. So, but what I will say about it is that temptations will still come, but they'll leave. So just breathe, let them happen, and just you constantly have to make the decision that I'm not going to drink today. I'm not going to smoke today. I'm not going to shoot today. Just not today. We've all read, or a lot of people have read, The Power of One More by Ed Milet. Mm-hmm. And he talks about his father's story with alcohol. It's just, I'm just not going to drink today. And that's what I was telling myself. It's just, I'm not going to do this right now. I remember being in infantry school, and just, it was rough at times, and experiences in the military. It's just, I'm just not going to quit right now. I'm just going to keep going for 10 more minutes, just a little bit more. So and the people I know that have been in things like AA and stuff like that, it's just one step at a time. It's one day at a time. And that's really what it is. As an addict, really, if you're starting out in a life of sobriety, just take it in small steps and honor those wins, honor those victories when you overcome the temptation.
Guys, there's so much gold here. I've talked about this on previous podcasts because it's something I really believe in, is quit tomorrow or start tomorrow, whatever you want to word it in your head. But I've done that for most of my life. Tomorrow I'll sleep in, tomorrow I won't make calls, tomorrow I'll take off. And I've done that for literally years before things became a habit. So do whatever it needs to get your brain in. And people are like, well, you're BSing yourself. I'm like, no, I really literally mean tomorrow I'll sleep in. It wasn't I was like, I'm just saying that. No, I was like, tomorrow I can sleep in. And the next day would come and I'd be like, today, you know what? I can get up. I just woke up, so I might as well get up. Tomorrow I'll sleep in. And I just did that. So I love that because I think there's so much power in that. I don't think enough people use that, where they're like, I'm just quitting forever. Even right now, I'm on a pretty strict diet plan. for my MS. And I'm like, people are like, how long are you gonna do it? I'm like, well, kind of have some goals, but like, it's meant to be kind of forever, but like, it's not forever. I'm gonna say it like one day at a time. Cause same
Yeah,
thing, if I think forever, I'm like, I'll never have ice cream again in my life. Like, oh my gosh, that sounds terrible.
I know.
So,
Well, one of the things that was really hard for me before I quit, because it wasn't like I had just never thought about quitting and then I just did it one day. I had thought about it. I knew it was a problem for me. I knew I was an alcoholic. Um, I just didn't have the courage to admit it out loud to anybody else and to take responsibility and hold myself accountable.
mm,
But I couldn't picture my life without drinking
hmm,
or without smoking. Like, how am I going to enjoy life without having a drink? How am I going to enjoy going to a social event and being around other people who are drinking without drinking myself? And so I have to reprogram myself, and I had to get past that. And what I've realized is that one, I can still have fun. I can still enjoy life. If anything, I enjoy it more because I have a clear mind. And two, I don't wake up the next day wondering what I said or did in front of other people that I might have to apologize for.
right.
So it's possible. It's just that you have to be willing to step out in faith, and bet on yourself.
And I think adding to that, because I think this is a big thing for anyone listening to this that maybe doesn't struggle with it, anyone that struggled with an addiction, whatever it is, like I said, workaholism is an addiction, whatever it is, they you can't do a little bit. You know, one of the hardest addiction, I heard Andy, Frisella talk about this, and it just brought it such an awareness, is food. And,
Yeah.
food addiction is massive because it's like telling a cocaine addict, you can't do cocaine, but you have to do like a little bit every day or you die. um,
Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
isn't it crazy? So like food addiction is, if you're listening to this and you're like, man, you're struggling with that, you know what? I feel you. And I bet Anthony feels you, because that's like got to be the hardest addiction to overcome. And what I do in that, and maybe this will help anyone that's listening with food addictions, is I cut out specific food things. So like, and I cut them out. Like people are like, you don't drink coffee? I'm like, I don't drink coffee. Now, for a while I was drinking like a mocha, and I've cut out sugar
Mhm.
now, but like, I was like, okay with that. They're like, well, how's that okay? I'm like, I just cut out the food group of coffee.
Yeah.
I cut
Yeah.
out the food group of French fries. I cut out like I could still have potato wedges, like, but I cut out whole sections, and now I'm like, no sugar, no dairy, no wheat, no eggs, no. It's just like blanket no on certain
Yeah.
things, and that helps me a lot because I'm super addictive. So people are like, oh, you can have a little bit. No, no, I really can't. I'm like all in or all out.
That's
So
like having just a little, like one bite of ice cream. No, it doesn't work
no,
like that.
I'll eat
Or
the whole freaking thing.
what do they say about Pringles, right? Once you pop, you can't stop. So just don't eat the first one.
Yes,
Just
yes,
don't even start there. And
yes.
yeah, you're so right. And food is tough, and so many people struggle with that because food is always there. It's marketed to us everywhere
Social.
we go. It's social. I mean, you celebrate with
You
food.
have to
You
eat.
Yeah, you mourn with food as well.
Yeah.
We do so many things around food. So having that emotional attachment is very tough, and breaking that is tough.
Yeah, I just talked to my mom actually this morning. I was like, "Hey, what are you doing for Father's Day?" And then she's like, "Well," and dad suffers with diabetes and stuff and all this stuff, and he's actually been finally watching his diet somewhat. Never has. He's in his 70s, finally is. And so mom's like, "Well, there's this like buffet." And then she's like, "Well, maybe we'll take him out." And I says, "Whoa, like just because it's Father's Day," I said, "Do what you want, but just because it's Father's Day doesn't mean he needs to eat something unhealthy and die." Like
Yeah,
our mindset is like, oh, because it's your birthday, now you get to eat sugar and like
yeah.
make yourself sick. Like I'm like, this is a faulty society we're in again. It's like it's
That's
no
that's
different than
like
saying, hey,
me.
have one drink. Because it's your
Yeah,
birthday, you can have one. No, first of all, I can't have one. And why? Why? Because it's it just makes me so bad, this stuff. Why? Because it's a celebration. Are we doing something that's harmful?
yeah,
And it's our
exactly.
society. Like I struggle with that. I'm like, what do I buy someone? Oh, chocolates. Well, I'm like, I can't do that anymore because I don't eat them. So I'm like, okay, now I'm like buying them like carrots, but I really am now. I'm like, well, this is what I'm getting them. Like, I don't
Yeah,
freaking know. Like,
yeah. It's crazy to have to really change the way we think and approach life when it comes to all these addictive things like food, work, our phones, social media.
oh,
I mean, I
still
think we're
working
all
on that
guilty of
one.
that. I know. Um, It's everywhere we turn, because in today's world, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a business owner, you have to use a smartphone, and
Exactly.
you almost have to be on social media
Yeah.
to market yourself. And so it's like, well, I'm just going to go in here for work, and then next thing you know, you're
Three
scrolling
hours
reels on
later.
Instagram. It's nuts. It's nuts. So, there's ebbs and flows, there's ups and downs. I think one of the biggest mistakes people make is that when they have this moment of weakness and they relapse with any addiction, whether it's with dieting and exercise, or whether it's with alcohol or any other drug, is that maybe they screw up and have a drink, and they say, well, I just screwed up 6 years of sobriety, I might as well just go back to drinking all the time. Or, man, I had that slice of cake, I ate too much of it, diet's over, I'll just start back again on Monday. It doesn't have to be that way. You can say, all right, I made a mistake, I'm not happy about it, but it happened, I'm not going to make that mistake again. But just because I made this one mistake doesn't mean that I need to throw out all the work that I've done,
Yeah.
and all the effort
Take
that I've put
75
into.
hard.
Yeah.
Like people miss one day and then they're like, you know what? I'm just going to give it a week and go again. In the meantime, they eat like all the crap, like drink all the things and do all the things. I'm like, and I went off 75 hard. Like I did 75 hard. And when I came off, I was more unhealthy after 75 hard than I was on 75 hard. And that's why I actually haven't done it, the whole thing again, because it
Yeah.
was too strict how I set it up. Now everyone sets it up. I was too strict. And so the whole lack of like no sugar for me at that point, I wasn't ready for it. So afterwards I went back to like all the things, like
Yeah.
not
And
just ice cream, like everything.
it's funny you say that. I remember being in Fort Benning, Georgia, in infantry school, and I had a little notebook, a little journal where I would write things down, and I would crave food. Like, oh man, I can't wait to get out of here, and I'm gonna go get this. I don't know why, but I wanted a fillet of fish from McDonald's so bad. I don't even
Oh,
really
those are
care about
so
it,
good. I'm with you.
but for some reason, that's what I wanted, and so it
Oh,
was like, and you build it up in your mind, right? So the whole time you take something away, you build it up. The thing is that when we tell ourselves we can't have something, we want it even more. Have
yes.
you ever had to fast before getting labs drawn at the doctor,
Yes.
right? And you're so hungry that night because you know you can't eat, right? You're so thirsty, you want this. But I found that if I told myself I can eat that if I want to, I'm just going to have to deal with the consequences. So it's not that I can't.
I choose
I'm
not
choosing.
to is a
I
word that I say.
choose exactly. I'm choosing not to because this. So reframing our thought processes around these things, around these vices, I think is crucial to long-term success.
100%. Oh man, I agree with that. That's so much. So let's go into a little bit more of your story. I love this stuff. This is so good. But you know, you're coaching now. This is like, I would say your passion project is now the coaching side of helping, men. Tell us a little bit more about what you're doing and, how it's helping and where do you see it going?
So I was ordained as a minister almost 2 years ago, and when that happened, I had a few opportunities to go pastor some local churches, but for whatever reason, I just felt that I was not the right person to be there, to be pastoring that church. I felt like one, I wasn't really welcome. I didn't kind of match the style and the culture of the church, so I didn't pursue those opportunities. I declined those. But I'm already working as a business coach for my good friend and my coach, Tom Reber, over at the Contractor Fight, coaching contractors on how to run profitable businesses. And so I'm already in this space. And then it just kind of dawned on me is why not minister to the people that I'm coaching? But why not broaden that to have a wider net to be able to reach more people, not just contractors, but entrepreneurs? And I said, okay, well, what about who do I know? Well, I know men. So why don't I coach male entrepreneurs? What would I coach them in? How to be a better husband, a better father, a leader in the community, and a business owner all to bring glory to God. So I can coach them to become the best version of themselves, not for themselves, but for God. And in turn, everyone else benefits from that. So that's kind of how Iron Sharpens was born. And I offer one-on-one coaching. We do group coaching. We have masterminds and stuff like that. But it's really helping people kind of go after their calling. And so while I might not be, where I want to be, I am a few steps ahead of others. So I'm trying to bring other people up with me. And with June being Men's Mental Health Awareness Month, I'll say this, and I'll put a disclaimer, so don't come at me in the comments. I love women. I think women's health is very important, and women are a gift from God. But I think men's mental health often takes a back seat in today's culture and society. Yeah. So that's where I fall in. But the church as a whole has done a big disservice to men in the world. And I think society as a whole too, in emasculating men, really, and kind of putting them on the back burner. So I want to change that. There's other Christian coaches out there, but a lot of them are kind of, I don't know how else to say it, but they're wimps. And
we call it.
And a lot of them use it as an aside. It's almost like a politician going to church and shaking hands and kissing babies just to say that he went to church to get the vote. I think there's other coaches that out there do that. So I'm leading with my faith in everything that I do, but also I'm not a wimp. And so I'm pretty, I wouldn't say I'm not a jerk, but I'm very
direct,
outspoken. And I don't sugarcoat anything because I don't think that's what people need. And so I offer a different flavor and a different approach than most people. And so far, the response has been wonderful, and people are really growing. It's really helping other people out there in the space. So
I love that. And where do you see it going in the next 5 to 10 years? What's kind of your vision for that, Anthony?
So that's the grand question is over this past year. So I've been really fortunate to grow my construction company to a very profitable company with the help of my coach, Tom, and everything that I've learned there and now the things that I coach. But the problem is that it's not fulfilling. I'm good at it. We build some really cool things for some amazing people, but it's not fulfilling. It's not my purpose. It was a blessing for me at the time because I was able to pay the bills and support my family. Yeah. But I'm in a different season in life, and now I have to pursue a calling. So in the next 5 to 10 years, I expect Iron Sharpens to be huge. And I envision, 500 people in the group format, and masterminds, and then being able to bring on other coaches to help support and growing this into a really large community with worldwide reach. And Greystone Remodeling, my construction company, I will be exiting from permanently.
It's really cool. So guys, if you're listening to this, sometimes what you're doing, a lot of times I think people get hung up on this whole calling and purpose thing. How old are you, Anthony?
I'll be 36 next month.
Okay. I know you were relatively younger than me, but you're not like 20. So sometimes people, I feel like, think if they haven't got it right away, they're not going to get it. But sometimes the business like Anthony had is the reason he's able to coach people on how to run a business and stuff is because he ran a business. A coach that has not run a business should not be coaching you on how to run a freaking business. So there's one of those things I'll say in the thing of coaching. So because he did that is what's enabling him now to do his calling. So sometimes what you're doing right now, you're like, oh, or you get an opportunity, you don't take it. I know people like that. They're like, oh, that's not really what I'm called for. Well, maybe you have to do the steps on the way to find your calling. So if you hadn't have done that and you're just like sitting there like, you know what, I'm just going to work at McDonald's or whatever until I find my calling, well, you'd be broke and you wouldn't be able to do your calling because you'd have no experience to be able to actually coach people on what to do because you don't have any clue what to do. So
exactly.
Yes. So I want people to really listen to that because like I said, a lot of people I hear because I talk to them and they're like, well, I don't know that that's my thing or whatever it is. And I'm like, that might not be your thing, but if you haven't found your thing, maybe do that thing and then it will get you towards your thing.
My wife has done the same thing too. I mean, I always say I married an older woman, but she's only a few months older than me.
Jeez.
But so it was last year at 35, she felt the call to pull to go back to school, to go to graduate school, to get a degree in something she had never considered doing. And now she's in grad school and she's going to be a licensed clinical therapist. So and she works in healthcare right now, but more in the financial sector. She's making this giant pivot. She hated school when she was doing her undergrad work, and now she loves it because she feels like she's fulfilling her calling, she's fulfilling her purpose, and she's doing what she's always been meant to do. But all the life experiences that she's been through and all the therapy that she's been through is helping her pursue that. So
And
I
even
think
having you in her life.
yeah.
I would see what you've gone through. There's some clinical therapy going on. So
Oh my gosh, I've been through so much counseling. I've been through more counseling in probably the last 15 years than most people do in a lifetime.
wow, there you go. See, this is the power of it. And so someone's listening to this and they're like, I want to do some of this stuff, but obviously a lot of the stuff the counseling and stuff you paid for. And a lot of times people use money as an excuse or as a reason or as a, what do you want to call it? Why they don't progress or they don't hire someone or they don't do the thing. What are your thoughts on that?
So I explain it this way to the people that I coach when money is an issue. Yeah, money's a tool, but look, if you're waiting for the right time to do something, it's never going to show. It's never going to be there. I remember when we talked about having our first child, our son Ethan. We didn't really have any money. It's like, how can we can barely eat. How can we do this and have a child? But you know what? We did, and we made a way, and we didn't get any handouts, and everything was great. Mm-hmm. There's never going to be a perfect time. Sometimes you just have to jump. If you're getting the call, stop waiting for the perfect time. The money will be there. The money will show up when you need it. It might not always show up in the way that you want. You might have to get creative, but you are going through the school of hard knocks and you're learning so many valuable lessons that you'll be able to help teach others. So many people focus on the end of the journey that they miss the lessons in the journey itself. And then when they get to the end, they're like, well, this wasn't what I thought it was going to be. It's because they're not living in the present. They're not being mindful of the processes that they're going through to shape them into the people that they've been becoming throughout the process. I've heard my friend Tom shared with me, it's not always our position in life, but it's our trajectory. So enjoying the journey, enjoying the growth, enjoying the trials too, because our mistakes are often our biggest teachers. Just jump. You have to take a leap of faith. No one's going to do it for you. And if you don't do it now, when you feel the call, in 5 or 10 years, you might look back and say, you know what? I should have done that. And now the opportunity is passing by. And then you're going to live with regret for the rest of your life. So instead of living with regret, just jump. And you might fall on your face a few times, but at least you'll know. And you won't have to live with the regret in the future.
So you're listening to this and this is grabbing you, whatever it is that you're thinking about, go do it. Make that call, start that business, reach out to that person. I don't know what it is, but this is your call right now. So do the thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Use this to do the thing. Because I agree. I have so many people that, tomorrow I'm going to start, next week, whatever it is. And they just, it's been literally years and nothing changes. So if nothing changes, nothing changes. You have to do that.
That's right.
So that's really cool. I love this. So in wrapping up, I always ask 3 final questions and then anything that we didn't touch on that you think our listeners would really be impactful for. And guys, we'll have all the information in the show notes for Anthony, how to reach him, all the things that he sends me. It'll be good stuff. I'll have that all in the show notes. But first and final question, and we kind of touched on this a little bit, is if someone's looking for their purpose, what's one sentence you would say that could help them find it?
If you're looking for your purpose, you'll never find it. It will find you.
Cool. I like that. Number 2, what's a favorite quote and why?
And I won't get it word for word. But if it's a quote from a person, I would say "Change Your Thoughts and Change Your World" by Norman Vincent Peale. And because the way we think about things, the way we approach life, and it's the 6 inches between our ears that affects everything else. So our worldview, the lenses that we see life through, is so important on how we go through life. Sometimes we need to change our thoughts and to change the way we look at things in order to move forward. There's multiple ways to go up the same mountain, but sometimes we need to look around the other side to see the escalator.
It's good. And third and final question is, what's one word or sentence you want on your gravestone?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. Servant.
Love that. All right. You run
That's
into
my
someone.
purpose.
Go ahead.
That's my purpose, is to serve others.
Cool.
So,
You run into someone in a coffee shop and they're like, that's so good. They're working on their purpose, or they're quitting an addiction, or whatever they, got out of this podcast, which I think was a lot of tangible gold. What's something we didn't touch on that you think would be really impactful for our listeners?
look up for the people that are a few steps in front of you, or who are doing what you're wanting to do, and reach out to them. What I found is that the most successful people are often the most giving people.
Mm-hmm.
And if you reach out to them, most of them will be more than willing to schedule a time to chat with you, or at least point you in the right direction. So don't be afraid to reach out to people and say, what do I need to do? How did you get to where you are? What are the steps that you took? And as you do the same thing, look behind you and pull the ones up that are, just behind you as well.
Cool. I love that. Guys, make sure to rate, review, subscribe. As I said before, let's go out there. Let's change the world one starfish or one person at a time. If we can change one life at a time together, we can change the world. Thanks so much for being on, Anthony.
Thank you so much. It was a blast.